Good evening and welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us for yet another episode. Let's get right into it. My guests this evening, I'll start with Hilda Twonjere, who is right next to me. Hilda is the Executive Director of FemRight, Uganda Women Writers Association. She's a writer, an editor, and a feminist. She believes in gender equality as a driver of positive change and economic development. She's a member of development initiatives, including the Graca Machel Trust Women in Media Network, Action for Development, ACFOD, African Asian Writers Union, African Women Writers Initiatives Network, and of course, FemRight. Hilda is a wife, a mother, and a recipient of a national medal on International Women's Day 2018 for her contribution to Uganda's literary heritage and women emancipation. My next guest is Joy Mirembe, who is right across from me. Joy is a passionate writer both in newsprint and on social media. She is a teacher, an entrepreneur, and a personal development coach with a career span of 14 years. Leading brands like telecoms giant Airtel Uganda, MTN Uganda, the Daily Monitor, and the startup Financial Enterprise Uganda have benefited from her acumen and know-how. Now, before her current assignment at Akamai Global, whose business development arm she leads, Mirembe was manager of circulation operations at the Monitor Publications. She has consulted for TechnoServe Uganda and facilitated numerous financial literacy organization development and team building trainings with several other firms. Her order for life, children, and family making can be gleaned from the weekly column Mean a Tech that she authors in the Saturday Monitor newspaper, and she's done this for the past 13 years and counting. Music, still art, and domestic tourism are her outdoor pursuits. And my final guest is Hope Babigumira. She's a mother, she's a wife, she's the author of a book called No Makeup On, The Rebirth of Identity. Hope loves to sing and to watch detective series, and she also loves to take long walks. A very warm welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this Sunday evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm hoping we're going to find our voices, yes, as we go along with the conversation. So you're all writers, and I see you holding your book, Hope. This is Hope's book. It's called No Makeup On, The Rebirth of Identity. This came out last year.
Yes.
What was it writing the book?
How was it?
What was it like for you?
What was it? Oh, it was an emotional experience for me. There were some painful memories, some things I had to go over again, and it was a journey, an emotional journey and a healing process for me. It was like being my own shrink.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
How do you put aside the pain, the feelings, and just continue to write every day?
Okay, what helped was I had a deadline. Okay. I had a deadline, so I really had to get on with it. Besides that was the why I was writing, the passion behind the message in the book. I think that's what kept me going, because I kept saying, you know what, Hope, it doesn't do young women justice for you to sit on this story and not share your experiences, your lessons, so that they can live better lives and be more responsible adults in the future.
So you wrote for the next generation of women?
Yes, I did.
Well, Hilda, you're a writer, and you're also a writer, Joy. Why do you write? Why is it important for us to write?
I write for therapeutic reasons. It's part of my writing has been from my experiences as a mother, and sometimes I'll just be running mad with the whole thing of being a mom. So it would give me therapy, you know. So I would put my experiences down on paper, and it wouldn't matter anywhere, you know. On tissue, I've written on tissue paper. I've written in a bathroom. I've written in an airport line. I've queue, a bank queue, or anywhere. So it's also a platform, you know, for by which you express or reach out or inform or inspire or comfort somebody. Yeah,
okay.
So.
When she said writing is therapy, I remembered when I was in secondary school and I wrote an essay, and the teacher sent back my paper and she'd written in bold red ink, writing is therapy. And I think that was the start of my love for writing. Of course, I haven't written as many books as Hilda has, or even one. But Hilda, why do you write?
I write really for many reasons, but first I write when I have a story to tell, when I have something to say. And I'll say it in a true life story, I'll say it in a poem, I'll say it in a short story. I haven't attempted a novel, but yeah, those are my, so far those are my platforms.
Okay.
I've written for children. And sometimes I write because there's a moment that I want to hold, and so I can hold it in a poem. There's something I want to share, so I can share it in a story. There's like my very, very first short story, which is, it's titled Becoming a Woman. It was an experience I had, something I had watched in primary school is what triggered it off.
Okay.
And I wanted to relive that so that other people, yes, to relive the memory,
Okay.
so that other people could relive it with me. So I really write for many reasons,
Okay.
and from different spaces.
None of us is writing for the money. It's not a job for any of us. Are we writing to provide a service to society? Okay, so we agree that sometimes it's an outlet for what we are feeling, but none of us is doing it for the money or for...
Well, the money comes. Even any writer, if you're bestseller, for example, you'll make money, quite a lot of money. So I think ultimately, well, for me, why I wrote, have I made money?
Have you made
Not
money?
yet, but
Okay.
I believe I am going to make money.
Okay.
Let's have faith. Let's have faith.
I don't write for money, but I do other writing related things for money. So then someone who knows I've written a short story will give me short stories to judge.
Okay.
Someone who knows I write poetry will give me a poetry writing workshop to run. So it might not necessarily be the piece that you have written directly, but writing related work.
Will still, you know,
Yes.
be a job.
Yes.
Okay, well, Joy, you write posts online quite a bit, and I know that a lot of people struggle with reading. So a lot of people struggle with reading a book and getting to the end of it, but they will read a Facebook post, but only if it's up to a certain length. So when it's up to a certain length, you must attach a picture to keep their attention. How do we get more people reading?
The Facebook posts are interesting, but it's also that people create a connection with you and a certain relationship and rapport, a virtual one with you. And then depending on that relationship and how you've built it with people, that audience which is out there, you find they'll read it. Even when it's very long sometimes, they'll peruse through it somehow, of course. But experience has taught me over the years that you give it a punch. You know, somebody says, you know, you make it like a mini skirt. You know, it shows just a little bit. So it has it has a certain punch to it. So when people have learned that out of you, they look forward to your writings. They follow them even when they are not there. So,
Okay.
I guess that's how it's worked.
How do you think that our local content, so books like this, books like No Makeup On, your book Hope, and your short stories Hilda, how do you think that these compete with what's already out there in the market? We grew up reading, and in your book it says what you grew up reading. There was the Mills and Bones, but then there were other books, the Sidney Sheldon books, the
Enid Blyton.
Enid Blyton, you know, all of those books. How do we make sure that our writing, our local content, measures up to the standards that people have now, or, you know, does us justice and people are able to read our books?
But do people have standards anyway? Because
That's a good question.
yeah, sometimes you feel like they don't. I've worked in a media house before, and I know that sometimes the greatest stories, the really, really what you thought was a beautiful piece, you know, that day the paper doesn't sell as much, and it's like people want, they're excited about certain things more than the richness of the content.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you feel like this, I just wish people had paid attention to this one. There was so much to pick out of it. There was so much to have gained out of it. But I feel that as an audience, as readers, generally the Ugandan audience especially, we haven't really appreciated that the quality that much.
Okay.
It's probably a bit different across the board, and I say this very carefully because I know that that it's been something that, you know, has some controversy around it. But when I was in the media, I remember one outstanding thing. I went to visit one of the mother plants out of the country where we were attached, and their print number for copies done and sold was maybe 10 times. That's just one house, one printing house. I'll put a figure to it. Let's say a Sunday copy, they were doing 250,000 copies for a Sunday. And in Kampala here, in Uganda here, ours, all the publications together that time were about 70,000, everything combined. So I did realize that time that our reading was significantly lower than that, and that maybe also affected the quality of what was being written.
How do we set these standards so that we are not having people looking at the book and
putting it out?
Yes.
I think what the challenge probably, one of the challenges is that Ugandans were not used to Ugandans writing. So we were reading things from outside, and that it has failed to catch up that actually today a lot of Ugandans are writing. And so that is now where the challenge is. So we need to get out.
Build Uganda.
Yeah, buy Ugandan, buy Ugandan book. Yes. Yeah, so we now really need to go out and show the people that we are that we are writing, that Ugandans are writing. And for example, Femrite, in her introduction, she told me, yes, we have a lot of programs in schools. We have writers clubs in schools, and we do a lot of take back to your community projects where we take writers back to their communities, where we are introducing writers, Ugandan writers, to Ugandans, to remove that that system where the unfamiliar story from the outside has become Uganda's familiar story. So that's really what we have to do, without getting shy about it.
For a lot of us, the first times we were trying to write anything, the girl that we're describing had blue eyes and a certain color of hair, and you know, so that's great what you're doing. How many writers do you have at Femrite?
As membership, our membership is up to about 148.
How many are actually writing books?
Actually writing?
Yeah, books, poetry.
I think about 50. We've published over 50 writers, maybe one poem, one short story, and then about 25, 30 are actually writing. Okay. Yeah.
When you write your work, hope you've been silent. When you write your work, so I'm going to pick on you, and it's out there, so you have a book and it's out there, no makeup on. What is the one question you hate to be asked?
I think the one question I hate to be asked is, how did your husband take it? Or how did my mother take it? It makes it seem like me writing and opening up is still a taboo or a crime, because I share some intimate personal details in my book, and yet these are issues that are happening daily in our society. The statistics are crazy when it comes to some of the issues I raise in the book. So when I say, how did your husband take, like, I think at times people are trying to plant things in his head. He would be normally okay, but he, like, at the end, you're like, maybe your family is going to start thinking maybe there's a problem with you opening up, and yet these are issues we need to discuss urgently before they get out of hand.
Can I mention some of these issues? Well, they're going to buy the
how
book
will they
anyway.
buy the book if you mention the things right now?
Okay, fine. I won't mention them, but I thought we'd give them a little bit so that they know.
Go buy the book.
Okay, go buy the book. I won't tell you.
I would like to hear one small little one.
Fine.
That's when I'll buy the book.
Okay, so I know you mentioned there's sexual abuse in your book. I know you went through that as a child, and well, I don't know if should I talk about more.
Yeah,
Is this a test
enough.
of how much I read?
That's enough, you know, to tickle her brain already. I think she's like, what?
You know?
You know, like,
yeah, that's kind of
and
true.
that's the thing, because when you read the news daily, if you watch NTV News, for example, the cases are up.
Yeah.
The statistics are up of these things that are happening. And while I sit in my house and I have now a lovely family and lovely children, and I'm like, ooh, and I joined the people who are saying, ooh, it didn't happen. It doesn't help the victims of these cases, or it doesn't help us to spread the gospel and speak out and say you can heal from this, or we can actually speak out and stop it.
Do these
So yes.
conversations take you back to, do they always,
Right.
so if you watch the news and, you know, we're...
Of course, I empathize. I mean, I know how bad it can be on your psychological health. I've been through it. I've healed from it by the grace of God. So yeah, it takes me back. Even the writing experience alone was hard enough.
And you said you found healing in writing.
I found healing in writing because I went through all that stuff, and just like she said, therapy. You cry, you beat yourself up, you basically you break once more and then begin the healing process, fixing process. But I've had great support. I have a great support system. The church, my family is very supportive. My husband is very supportive. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to
I'm
ask
good.
you what they said.
I'm good, yeah.
All right, let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, Nile Room, and I'm with a group of ladies talking about writing. And so I'd like to ask, what was it like, the writing that a lot of women used to do back then? Do you see a change from then and now, how we're expressing ourselves in writing?
Yes, I think there's a lot of change, and probably it comes from the many things that we've gone through, from the empowerment that women have attained. I feel that today many women writers have found their voice, and so they are writing truthfully without censoring themselves. They are writing their stories. But those days, as she talked about how people would ask her, but how can you say this? Many women, when they write, they ask you, what do you think your father will feel? What do you, how will your son interpret your writing? And yet, the writing is not about you. You're creating characters. So, but today, I feel that we've attained a certain level of independence. And so it's a very good time for us to flip over that narrative.
We're not apologizing for our stories anymore.
No, and I think we don't have to anymore. They are our stories, so let's tell them.
How do we further change the narrative, the way women are portrayed in writing, in novels, in poems, in posts online? How do we change that narrative?
I think a lot of, if you go to the press, for example, if we picked any newspaper now and looked at it, you would find the abused woman, you would find the fighting woman, you would find, it's so rare that, I mean, the story of the empowered woman is not a story, will not be picked, yeah? And so what we really need to do now is to balance the story, have the story as the full, probably I say the full story of the woman, not look out for only the story that makes her the victim, because many women are victors, many women have done great things. It does not mean that when you're abused as a child, that defines your life forever.
For the rest of your
so
life.
then let's have the other you. Yeah,
the one who came out
yes,
of it all.
Yes, and triumphed.
Look at her.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I think we need to portray women, like maybe in the Black Panther way, the Wakanda way of, you know, let's come out and show women strong, brilliant. We are brilliant, and we are very creative. I think, and again, we were talking earlier about the content of why aren't people reading our stories. Maybe we need to to look more at who we are writing for. Because we might keep thinking we know what the Ugandans want, yet we are not actually listening to them. Are we listening so that we create stuff that actually appeal to them or appeal to the world? Yeah, what is the world looking out for? What you know, what content will get them rather than just write? I know people have really good stories, but even how you write your story matters.
One of the things that you pointed out was that people should be more real with their stories, like
Yes.
you were with your book. You had no makeup on. You told as much, I mean, all of it. But do you think that as much as you could tell, do you think that many people are able to do what you did, to take off the makeup and just tell it all?
No, I don't think many people are that courageous because they're still hiding behind keeping up appearances. But also, I still think we are still, we have an issue with low self-esteem. So people don't even know how capable they are in the writing industry. People haven't pushed themselves to create because we don't have like good platforms where guys can look out for specific talent. Like, we have really incredible writers, but they can't come out if they don't have platforms where they can express themselves. So we don't even know how capable we are in the writing.
Have you felt judged after writing your book? Have you walked somewhere and, you know, somebody says something and you feel like, why did I?
No, it's not. I think I judge myself more than people would judge me. Like, it would be the way I walk into the room and someone has read my book, I'm like, oh, they know this about me. So it's more me, but I don't even think if they judged me, it would matter at this point.
Okay.
Because I'm over it, can I say? I'm stronger. I'm the empowered woman she's talking about. I'm stronger for it, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Hilda, you mentioned earlier about censorship, and so I have a question, and you've been quiet, Joyce, so I'm going to pick on you. There's a prominent speaker, he's called Dr. Jordan Peterson, and he said that the guarantee to free speech is fundamental advancement of society because through free speech we engage our fellows in constructive dialogue from which we find solutions to the problems that beset us in society. Free speech allows us to articulate our thoughts without fear, and you know, we can say the same about writing. Is there a need for censorship? Looking at the fact that we can do so much when we write. So you might have people who might use writing as a propaganda tool. You might have people who use it as an avenue for perversity. You can have people who use it to cause harm, you know, as opposed to those who are using it to do good.
Writing, for me, is a responsibility thing. That you will censor, I think, the world and the way it moves, maybe not. I mean, the extent to which you're able to is interesting because there are different people who benefit from either way. You know, the propaganda one, there is a group of people who benefit from that. From this other one where you're building people, there is a group who benefit from that. So maybe not. I honestly, I wonder, I will say that it's there, but how will you affect it? For example, social media, how do you ensure you will censor that? But at the end of it all, I think anybody who is serious has a responsibility when you write. You don't simply write.
Okay,
And it is that responsibility for me which then drives you, how will you write?
And what will you write?
Yes, and what will you write? Even the people who use it as a propaganda platform or whatever have a certain driving force behind them. So,
Okay, there's Hilda.
Yeah, maybe to add that one of the areas that we don't give much attention is editing. So probably that's where an editor would play a very big role.
the difference though now is that this is writing now in so many angles. There is writing where it's a book,
Yes.
where before the book goes out, it's going to be edited and read
Besides, even
through.
the book we self-publish. The editor literally
You
has
know,
no choice.
Yes.
So it has to be your own conscience telling you do the right thing. But even the legal process should be able to deal with some of the
But the bit
sensitive-
which for me I'm concerned about, the whole wider angle, is that the world has changed. I was watching a clip of a 4 or 5 year old who could do square root, fifth roots and things like that. Who knew that would happen? So you can't see things only from your perspective and from where you are at. It's that the world has advanced so much, there is so much knowledge, there is so much out there. As to, I think then whoever is a writer, how do you position yourself to make the most out of that platform?
Okay. Well, we have free speech, and that sets us up for a lot of things. So you have a lot of people with opinions. So Joy, when you write on Facebook, you're going to have all of these responses, and a lot of people might agree, others might not agree, others might be abusive, they can be anything they want. How do you interact with your critics? Well, who is your strongest critic? Which critic do you listen to the most?
I think really from, I will just build on what Joy talked about, you as a writer being responsible for what you're writing.
So you're your
so
biggest
yes,
critic.
you have to be your best critic to start with,
Okay.
and then others. But for me now, where I am placed, we have a wonderful community of writers at FemWrite. We have a club, we critique each other. That is our first space. And then sometimes my children, I give my children to read before I even take to the writers club at FemWrite.
Oh, wow.
And there are other clubs.
It's very wide.
Critiquing is quite wide. You
It's-
could
it's-
critique
yeah.
on my writing style, on the content.
To critique your book. So who critiqued this book?
The
And
one-
the one you listened and you said, okay, you make sense, I'll change that, or I'll leave
Up
that.
to now, I still have quite a couple of critics. Of course,
There's
here and there.
critiquing and then there's criticizing. I don't know which one.
Critiquing, but I had a couple. There were many. There was, of course, I had editors. Then I had, of course, my spiritual authority, my pastors, and my husband himself, because I wasn't going to publish unless he said, you know what, go ahead. So yes, it went through vetting, through
A process.
a process.
Okay.
But partly that's because of my own personal responsibility. You have a question?
Hilda has a question.
Yes,
and she's afraid to use her voice.
yes. May I ask?
Yes, please.
She said, if your husband had not okayed it, you would.
I
have
would
published it?
not have published it. First of all, because my responsibility, I'm not going to pretend that I am a feminist. No, I am a wife.
Okay.
Like my CV has wife, and it comes first. So had he said, you know what, Hope, I'm not ready for this, it wouldn't have come out. Had my mom said, I'm not ready for this, but thank God they are all educated and
I
okay.
think that's why
and
you
they were
kept-
like, go ahead.
I think that's why you kept getting these questions of what did your mother and your husband think about it.
But I
Hilda, you need to read the book and
Yes,
to see where she's coming from.
I've already got myself a copy, so yeah, I'm so
Right.
ready
So,
to.
so
to-
Joy,
to
who is
read.
your number one critic?
Myself, first of all, it depends for which work. Like
For all of your work, Minatech, and then also for your social media platforms.
because with Aminatech, sometimes you may never know. There are people who don't really come out and say. Once in a while, I have some emails. In fact, I just remembered I have an email I haven't responded to, which is very wrong. But the gentleman brought issues which I just felt were so off from that. Anyway, my number one, maybe the kids themselves, because the column is a very personal story. It's a real day-to-day journal. It's
Okay.
not fiction. So it places me in a very interesting place.
So your children and yourself.
They haven't come out very
Daughters
strongly and
especially.
said so. It's because the story also sometimes hits on other people. So there's all those people involved.
Okay.
But I can't zero down and say I've had one critic. On social media, maybe I have a brother, a very close, who's both my friend and brother as well.
Right.
And he one time he told me to pull down a post.
And you did?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Well, let's take, and Hilda, I see you wanting to say something again, but let's take another short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center at Nairobi. The conversations that take place behind the scenes are quite interesting. So I know we'll have another chat after this about the influences on the writing that we do, and Hilda is looking
Very
forward
passionate.
to championing it. So, so one of the other questions that I wanted to ask you, because you're all writers and you're female, do you ever feel obligated to write about things that touch on women? You know, for example, maybe the plight of women, maybe easy access to education, or menstruation periods, or things like that. Do you ever feel that you have a responsibility to do that?
Absolutely. For me, I go by, like, when I was choosing what to write about last year, I looked through my life and said, what can I give? Because writing is not just, it's what you have on this. You're giving. You're giving of your gift. For me, that's how I take it. So I look through my life and I'm thinking, what can I give? And I've had experiences as a woman. So, and I had so much passion for young women. I can see them going the wrong way, being influenced by this and that, and making the same mistakes I went through. I'm like, no, they don't have to. They don't have to go through this. They can be knowledgeable about certain issues and know if you mess up here and there, you will go and you might even lose your life in the process. So I said, you know what, yeah, standard. We have to write about, okay, for me personally, I have to write about women's issues because that's what I have to give, my story, my life. Oh. And I know even in the future, I think when I write more books, there'll be, I don't know.
You have an audience that you are targeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Joy, you're nodding and shaking your head.
Because, no, not because I don't agree. I've always been fascinated by this kind of approach, because I've never usually seen myself as a woman. I've just always seen myself as Joy. Probably because of how I was raised. I'm the only girl in my mother had boys, and then I was the only girl, and I'm the last born. I lived with the boys. We all did things. We all worked. We all cooked. We all cleaned up. In fact, my brothers looked after me at some point. So I've always seen myself as Joy. It's now as an adult, maybe 2-3 years from now or backwards, that I've started to start to realize I stick out differently because woman. But before that, woman, not woman, it never was an issue. Even the way I'm raising my kids, there is no, I wasn't, well, this is the woman, this is the girl. So I never wrote, or I hadn't seen it from that angle. But now I realize that woman is different from man, roles are different, the way the world perceives us is different. Women are judged more harshly. You know, I've been on a board and it's only gentlemen. And I've very quickly realized that in the board meeting, I am quickly designated to being the secretary or serve the tea or whatever. And I was shocked initially. Now I've learned that that can be a strength. And how do I harness that strength, which is probably something for another day. Yeah. So I've just always written.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, Hilda, do you ever approach that in your talk about prejudices?
Yes, I do, but not as an obligation, but because they are my experiences. Okay. Yeah. Because they are things I watch every day. Everywhere I will recognize a story that is a woman's story.
Wow.
But it not that I will look out for it. Like you've said, you're on a board where you're with only gentlemen. I went, we had a board election some time back, and these gentlemen, people voted 3 men, so I came on, and I thought I would be unopposed. And I was so opposed, it was so hot, but I took it anyway.
Why did you think you wouldn't be opposed?
Because there were 3 already there, so I thought it would be common sense. I thought it would be obvious. Sorry, not common sense, but obvious. I thought it would be obvious.
Why? Weren't they looking at qualifications? And I'm just wondering, please don't throw stones at me. Because we live in a world where there's the question of women want all these places, but are they qualified for them? You know,
No,
so that's where it's coming
because
from.
you know, it's not. Sometimes it's not really just about qualification. It's about It's about finding your space. You're not fighting for the space, but you're seeking to make a contribution.
Okay.
You're seeking to participate. You're seeking to belong. Yeah. You're not fighting. No.
Yeah, but we can't
Yeah.
expect that everybody will look at it from that angle. A lot of people, you know, will look at it from the angle of, we're going to come against you because we want to know if you are qualified to come on the board that, you know, you're on.
Yeah.
So
I serve on African Asian Writers Union, and I'm the only female on that board. But
Okay.
yes, I went through such a struggle to get on.
congratulations. I'm glad that you're there. Thank you for
But that
representing.
doesn't mean that when I wrote like my book, for example, men can't benefit from it. They can, fathers especially, because then you can know how to deal with your daughter when she's
Who
going
to leave
through
your daughter with.
Yes, and who to leave your daughter.
Wow. Yeah.
And even boys, like gentlemen, how do you treat your wives, for example? How do you treat your girlfriends or your sisters?
Or who is the help that you bring
Yes.
at home? Am I giving away too much about the book?
No, you're
Okay.
not actually. It's great. It's
Okay.
great. So yeah, we write, yes, as women, for women, because we need the younger generation to learn from us. But also, I think the men would benefit from this. They actually need this.
Okay. So, again, you're all writers. Do any of you ever write, think about promotion, for example? So in your books or in your literature, in your stories, in your articles, do you ever think, this is my country maybe, let me promote it. Let me promote maybe culture, or let me promote something. Have you ever felt that I should use my skill?
Yeah.
What do you promote, if anything?
I am what you'd call an action writer. So my spiritual values have a lot to do with what I write.
Okay.
I've had days where I've said I've felt like a leading of sorts, that unction. So my writing is a platform, very, very deliberately, you know, because I've accepted that there's a responsibility and an area of influence that, you know, you have as a writer, like for me, because of the many years of writing. So I do have an influence of sorts. And my question is, Joy, how are you best using that influence?
Yes.
Not simply so that, you know, I'm there and I've written and written. No, there's much more for me than simply that. So each and every piece that I write, in my mind, I'm bearing that in mind.
Okay.
And so it inspires so much how and what is the content out there. There are things I will not even comment about or write about simply because of that responsibility. I've told you how my brother one time told me to pull down a post because, you know, he's like, Joy, there's a certain sense and responsibility and values that you carry.
He knows you a certain way.
Yes, and he knows also the kind of impact reading, you know, goes.
Yeah.
I was on the Ondaba campaign or some of the mountain climbing things, some of those things that I have done, and I have learned that, you know what, Joy, I mean, you meet somebody in a country somewhere and they're telling you about what you wrote,
yes.
or they tell you, when you wrote like this is what it did to me, this is how it helped me, or and you meet somebody, some random person. And for me, that hit me because it's like, oh my God. That means if I just write a certain way and I've not cared, I have the ability to destroy a life without even really thinking about it. Or there was a specific detail that I wanted to share, which I'm remembering.
All
right
right,
now.
so while you're remembering
Yes.
it, we cannot run away from the fact that our writing has effects. Yeah, it has far-reaching effects, so we really need to be careful about that. But our time is quickly running out, so I'd like each of us to share with us a parting shot. What would you like us to carry home with from this conversation? Would you you can answer the question very quickly and then share, because we don't have a lot of time left.
Maybe it can even it can still be the last bit
Okay.
that I say, which is related to what we write about and how and whether we can promote something. Deliberately, sometimes I have some stories where I have written about my village, I have described my village. There's a story I submitted, and it had a very beautiful description of Lake Bunyonyi, and that story became the lead promotional story. So I have a story in which I give my my background in terms of I am so and so's daughter from such, and you know that
I think I
heritage.
read that story.
Yeah.
It was one of the short stories in...
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's titled the headline.
Yes.
And interestingly, it's in a textbook in Kenya.
Not here.
Not here.
I have a question for the audience before you continue. Do we read, have we read Ugandan literature? Any of us read any Ugandan literature? No? No. Okay. All right.
You might start with
Hilda?
hope.
Yeah, start with hope. You were saying?
Yeah, so I was saying I will describe, I climbed Mount Elgon, so I will describe it probably in my next story. So
That's
yeah,
promotion.
I do, yeah.
Okay. Hope.
Patching short, for me, it's writers out there, I think go all out. Stop being discouraged by this talk, we are competing and everything. I think once you have something on the inside, if you share it, just give it, and let the world be the judge. Don't be afraid. I think I know the whole world is ahead of us, seemingly, but I think we also have something raw and fresh to give, because we have been silent for far too long. Okay. And I'm not discrediting the previous writers. I think they too need to just package their brilliance, their creativity in a way that the world can receive it. Because if people are not buying, they're not feeling it.
Okay.
It's not relevant to them. So I just want to encourage writers, just go on and give.
And since she hasn't said it, I'd just like to remind you that Hope has a book out, so look out for it. Joy, very quickly.
I'll borrow the understanding from Dr. Miles Munro, the late, who talks about don't necessarily live a long life, or don't necessarily die old, die empty.
Absolutely.
So for me, it's one of the things that I very, 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 very deliberately live by. I write very deliberately, I move very deliberately, I do life very deliberately, because at the end of it all, I want that everything that God planted and purposed in me, I have brought it out, and that when it is my time and I have gone, I'll go empty.
All right.
Wow.
Hilda, 1 second.
1 second
And it's
is
done.
that my dream is to see more Ugandan women writers on the Uganda school curriculum. Really, for so long we have male writers, and that just tells you who is generating knowledge that is being shared in public spaces. So I really, really would like to see more women on the curriculum.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you all so much for sharing. And like Joy has told us, let's go empty, let's die empty, let's not hold back. And thank you all once again for sharing your evening with us. NTV Weekend Edition is coming up next. Keep it NTV.